take a deep breath, and let's hear a story about Liora, the healer who transformed darkness with compassion and discovered her true strength lay in believing in herself. In a realm where stars whispered secrets to those who knew how to listen, lived a young woman named Liora. Her cottage sat nestled between ancient oaks at the edge of a small village, surrounded by gardens of healing herbs that released gentle fragrances into the air. Every morning she would wake to birdsong and the warm glow of sunrise filtering through lace curtains, casting dancing patterns across her wooden floor. As an apprentice healer, she spent her days learning the properties of plants, the movement of celestial bodies, and the ancient ways of mending both body and spirit. Despite her dedication, Liora carried doubt in her heart like a small stone, wondering if she would ever truly master the healing arts that seemed to come so naturally to her mentor. The village where Liora lived was a tapestry of thatched roofs, cobblestone pathways, and gardens bursting with colorful blooms that swayed gently in the breeze. Children played among fruit trees whose branches hung heavy with ripening apples and pears, their laughter floating through the air like music. Elders gathered in the village square, sharing stories and wisdom as they crafted wooden objects or wove baskets from reeds collected along the nearby river's edge. The rhythm of life flowed peacefully here, marked by the changing seasons and celebrations that brought everyone together in harmony. At the center of the village stood an ancient willow tree, its cascading branches creating a sacred space where people would often go to reflect or seek guidance. Liora's mentor, Liora, was a woman whose silver hair and lined face told of decades spent tending to others, yet her eyes sparkled with the vitality of someone half her age. In her presence, one felt immediately at ease, as if wrapped in a warm blanket on a cold night. Her hands, though weathered by time, moved with graceful precision when brewing remedies or applying healing techniques learned from generations before her. She had taken Liora under her wing 7 years ago, recognizing something special in the quiet, observant girl who had shown up at her door, clutching a bundle of perfectly harvested lavender. Magic isn't found in grand gestures, she often told Liora, but in the gentle attention we give to all living things. Alongside Liora lived a peculiar companion, a midnight black raven named Corvus, whose intelligence surpassed that of any ordinary bird. He had appeared one morning after a spectacular meteor shower, tapping insistently at her window until she let him in. To her astonishment, the raven spoke, though only to her, his voice deep and resonant like distant thunder. "There are things you must learn, Liora of the Healing Hands," he had said upon their first meeting. Since then, he had become her confidant and occasional guide, sharing fragments of ancient wisdom and occasionally challenging her with riddles that expanded her understanding. His feathers gleamed with an iridescent quality, that caught the light in ways that seemed almost magical. The village was protected by ancient stones arranged in a circle at its perimeter, carved with symbols that glowed faintly blue under the light of a full moon. These stones had stood for countless generations, their origins lost to time, but their power still felt by all who lived within their boundary. Visitors often remarked on the sense of peace that washed over them upon entering the circle, a gentle embrace that eased troubled minds and soothed weary hearts. Legend said that as long as someone with a pure heart tended to the stones, performing the seasonal rituals at the proper times, the village would remain safe from harm. For as long as anyone could remember, this had been true. In a small wooden chest beneath her bed, Liora kept her most precious possession, an ancient book bound in soft leather, the color of autumn leaves. The book had been a gift from Liora on the 3rd anniversary of her apprenticeship, its pages seemingly blank until held in the hands of someone with healing intent. Then and only then would words appear on the parchment, offering guidance tailored specifically to the reader's needs. Sometimes the book revealed recipes for remedies, other times it shared stories with hidden lessons, and occasionally it simply showed a single word or phrase that would later prove significant. Liora often consulted it before sleeping, watching in wonder as golden script materialized beneath her fingertips. The rhythm of Liora's days followed the movement of the sun and stars, beginning with dawn meditations beside the stream that ran behind her cottage. There, with her feet dipped in cool, clear water, she would breathe deeply and connect with the world awakening around her. Dragonflies skimmed the water's surface, leaving tiny ripples in their wake as birds called to one another from the trees. These quiet moments centered her, preparing her mind and spirit for the work ahead. After breakfast, usually porridge sweetened with honey from the village beekeeper, she would join Liora in gathering herbs, preparing remedies, or tending to those seeking healing. As twilight approached each day, villagers would often gather on the central green, bringing instruments and food to share as stars began to appear in the deepening blue sky. Flutes, drums, and stringed instruments created melodies that seemed to dance with the fireflies emerging from the tall grasses. Children chased these living lights while adults conversed, strengthening the bonds of community that sustained them through all seasons. Liora loved these gatherings, finding joy in the simple pleasure of being among people who cared for one another. On special nights, she would join the village storyteller in recounting tales passed down through generations. One such evening, as summer prepared to yield to autumn, something unusual occurred during the twilight gathering. As stars above began to pulse with increased brightness, their light seeming to bend and focus on the ancient willow at the village center. The tree's leaves rustled despite the still air, and patterns of light danced among its branches like living constellations. Conversations hushed as everyone turned their eyes skyward, witnessing the strange phenomenon with a mixture of wonder and unease. Corvus, perched on Leora's shoulder, dug his talons slightly deeper into her skin and whispered, "It begins now, the challenge you were born to face." In the days that followed, subtle changes rippled through the village like stones dropped in still water. Flowers closed their petals at midday, refusing the sun's embrace, while nocturnal animals appeared confused, wandering in daylight with disoriented movements. Children reported strange dreams of shadows gathering at the edge of the forest, whispering in languages no one understood. The protective stones at the village perimeter began to dim, their blue glow fading a little more each night, as if their ancient power was being slowly drained away. Liora grew increasingly concerned, spending long hours consulting scrolls and maps so old they threatened to crumble at her touch. On the seventh night of these disturbances, Liora woke suddenly from a deep sleep, her heart pounding against her ribs like a trapped bird. The air in her cottage felt heavy, charged with an energy that made the fine hairs on her arms stand on end. Moonlight streamed through her window with unusual intensity, illuminating her leather-bound book, which lay open on the table, though she distinctly remembered placing it in its chest before sleeping. Moving closer on unsteady legs, she saw words forming on the page in script that seemed to burn rather than glow. The ancient darkness stirs from its slumber, and only one who doubts yet perseveres can restore the balance. Below these words appeared a map, showing a path that began at the village and wound through forests, mountains, and valleys to a place marked with a symbol Liora had never seen before. Corvus flew through the open window, his wings creating shadows that danced across the walls of the small cottage. "Pack only what you can carry easily," he instructed, his voice more urgent than she had ever heard it. "Take the book, herbs for healing, and food for 3 days. We must depart before dawn breaks." Outside, the stars continued their unusual pulsing, but now they seemed to be forming a pattern, or perhaps a message, that only Liora could interpret. As she gathered her belongings with trembling hands, she fought against the voice of doubt within her that questioned why she, of all people, should be chosen for whatever journey lay ahead. "I'm not ready," she whispered to the empty room, receiving no answer but the continued glow of the mysterious map. As the first light of dawn painted the horizon in delicate brush strokes of pink and gold, Liora slipped quietly from the village boundaries, her heart heavy with both purpose and fear. The morning air carried the sweet scent of wildflowers and fresh dew, nature's gentle reminder that beauty persisted even in uncertain times. Corvus flew slightly ahead, occasionally circling back to ensure they remained on the correct path shown by the glowing map in her precious book. With each step away from the only home she had ever known, Liora focused on the sensations around her, the soft give of earth beneath her boots, the caress of a gentle breeze against her cheek, the distant melody of a thrush welcoming the new day. These small details anchored her to the present moment, keeping overwhelming thoughts at bay. By midday, the familiar landscapes had given way to the ancient forest of whispers, where trees towered so high their uppermost branches seemed to touch the clouds. Sunlight filtered through the canopy in dappled patterns, creating pools of golden light on the moss-covered ground. The forest welcomed Liora with a symphony of subtle sounds, leaves rustling in conversation, streams chuckling over smooth stones, and the occasional soft hooting of an owl not yet retired for the day. Despite the legends of travelers becoming lost among these trees, Liora felt strangely at ease, as if the forest itself recognized and accepted her presence. She paused beside a clear spring to fill her water flask, watching tiny silver fish dart between submerged stones like living flashes of light. As evening approached, Liora and Corvus came upon a small clearing where ancient stone pillars, half covered in emerald moss and flowering vines, formed a perfect circle. "We will rest here tonight," the raven announced, settling on one of the taller stones. "This place was created long ago as a sanctuary for travelers like yourself." Within the circle, the air felt noticeably warmer and filled with a subtle fragrance reminiscent of spring blossoms, despite the approaching autumn season. After gathering soft ferns for bedding, Liora prepared a simple meal of bread, cheese, and berries she had collected along the way. As she ate, watching twilight deepen around her, the stars appeared one by one overhead, seeming to shine with particular brightness within the boundaries of the stone circle. That night, as Liora drifted between wakefulness and dreams, the stones began to emit a soft, pulsing light that matched the rhythm of her heartbeat. Visions floated through her mind like autumn leaves on a gentle stream, ancient beings tending to the very same stones where she now rested, a darkness spreading slowly across lands now forgotten, and a brilliant light contained within a vessel shaped like a teardrop. Most vivid was the image of a woman with Liora's own face, but older and lined with wisdom, standing before a shadowy presence with arms outstretched, neither attacking nor retreating, but simply being present with unwavering compassion. When morning came, these visions remained clear in her memory, rather than fading like ordinary dreams. The journey continued through landscapes of breathtaking beauty, meadows carpeted with wildflowers whose perfume hung sweet and heavy in the air, streams that sang melodious songs as they tumbled over smooth stones, and groves of ancient trees whose presence felt almost sentient. On the third day, they encountered their first challenge at the foot of the Crystal Mountains, whose peaks gleamed like massive gems catching the sunlight. A ravine blocked their path, too wide to jump and too deep to climb down and up again. Hovering above the center of this divide was a being made entirely of mist and moonlight, its form constantly shifting between human and avian shapes. To pass, it spoke in a voice like wind through hollow reeds. You must relinquish something of value, not an object, but something carried within. Puzzled by this request, Liora opened her book seeking guidance, but its pages remained stubbornly blank. Corvus, too, offered no solution, saying only, "This challenge is yours alone to solve." As she pondered the misty guardian's words, Liora realized with growing clarity what she needed to surrender, the doubt that had been her constant companion since childhood. Standing at the ravine's edge, she closed her eyes and spoke aloud her deepest fears of inadequacy, acknowledging their presence, not with shame, but with gentle acceptance. "I release the belief that I am not enough," she declared, her voice growing stronger with each word. "I choose to trust the wisdom that led me here." As the last syllable left her lips, a bridge of living light materialized across the ravine, solid beneath her feet yet seemingly woven from the same radiance as stars. Beyond the crystal mountains lay a series of small villages, unlike any Liora had seen before. Here, buildings were constructed partially underground, with rooftops covered in flowering plants that changed color with the moods of their inhabitants. The people greeted Liora not with suspicion, but with knowing smiles, as if they had been expecting her arrival. In one such village, she encountered an elderly woman weaving patterns of startling complexity on a loom that appeared to be made of solidified moonlight. "You carry questions in your heart," the weaver observed without looking up from her work. "But more importantly, you now carry the beginnings of an answer." She invited Liora to stay for the night, sharing a meal of fruits that tasted of summer sunshine and spiced tea that warmed the body from within, creating a sensation of peaceful contentment. That evening, the village gathered in its central square, where a fountain of water that glowed with gentle bioluminescence created patterns that danced and shifted with the villagers' songs. Children placed small paper boats carrying tiny flames on the water's surface, each representing a hope or dream set free to find its way in the world. An elderly man with kind eyes and hands, gnarled from decades of working the earth, presented Liora with her own boat and candle. Sometimes he told her with a warm smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes, "We must release our intentions to the universe before they can manifest." Following tradition, Liora closed her eyes, held a wish for courage in her heart, and set her glowing vessel afloat among the others. As dawn broke the following day, Corvus led Liora to the home of a giant who lived in a cave decorated with paintings depicting the night sky through different seasons. Despite his intimidating stature, he stood 3 times the height of an ordinary man. His movements were gentle, and his voice soft as he welcomed them. "Few travelers remember to look up," he commented, serving tea in cups that would have been bowls in Liora's village. They missed the stories written among the stars. The giant explained that he had been watching the changing patterns overhead with growing concern. "The balance shifts," he rumbled, pointing to his most recent painting, which showed certain stars dimming while shadows crept between constellations. "What sleeps beneath the obsidian peak stirs once more." From the giant, Liora learned of an ancient conflict between light and shadow, neither inherently evil, but dangerous when forced out of balance. Long ago, a darkness had grown too powerful, threatening to extinguish all light from the world. The people of that time had managed to contain rather than destroy it, understanding that shadow has its rightful place in the natural order. This darkness had been sealed beneath Obsidian Peak, with starlight forming the bonds of its prison. But seals weaken over time, the giant explained, his large eyes reflecting concern, and memory fades across generations. Those tasked with renewing the bonds have forgotten their purpose. He studied Liora thoughtfully before adding, "Until now." Before departing the giant's cave, Liora received an unexpected gift, a small crystal vial containing what appeared to be captured starlight, glowing with gentle radiance. "This was entrusted to my ancestors by the last keeper of balance," the giant explained. "I have felt it growing warmer these past months, as if responding to some distant call." The vial hung from a chain of silver so delicate it seemed impossible it could have been crafted by the giant's massive hands. When placed around Liora's neck, the starlight within pulsed once before settling into rhythm with her heartbeat. The weight of responsibility settled more heavily upon her shoulders, yet simultaneously a new certainty began to replace her former doubt. The path to Obsidian Peak grew increasingly challenging, winding through territories where reality itself seemed fluid and unreliable. Landmarks would shift when viewed from different angles. Streams flowed uphill rather than down, and occasionally Liora would encounter her own footprints, heading in the opposite direction, though she had never circled back. During these disorienting passages, she relied on her senses to ground herself. The solid feel of earth beneath her feet, the crisp scent of pine needles, the distant call of birds, the taste of wild berries bursting with sweetness on her tongue. Corvus remained a reassuring presence, his voice a steady anchor when visual cues could not be trusted. On the 7th day of their journey, they encountered a blind sorceress dwelling in a meadow where flowers bloomed in colors Liora had never seen before, hues that seemed to exist somewhere between the familiar spectrum defying description. Despite her lack of physical sight, the sorceress moved with certainty among her garden, selecting herbs and blossoms based on their subtle energies rather than appearance. "You walk between worlds," she observed as Liora approached. "I have been cultivating certain essences for you. From these mysterious plants, the sorceress created an oil that, when applied to Liora's eyelids, allowed her to perceive the subtle energetic currents flowing through all living things." The world transformed before her enhanced vision, revealing connections that had always existed yet remained previously unseen. The final challenge before reaching Obsidian Peak came in the form of a labyrinth, constructed not of physical walls but of mist that solidified whenever Liora attempted to pass through it. At the labyrinth's entrance stood a child with eyes far older than their apparent years. "What you seek lies at the center," the child informed her, "but the path changes according to your thoughts. Fear creates dead ends, while compassion opens doorways." With this cryptic advice, the child vanished like morning dew under the sun's kiss. Taking a deep breath scented with wild thyme growing around the entrance stones, Liora stepped into the mist with renewed determination. Each time anxiety or doubt arose within her mind, the passages would narrow and darken. When she consciously shifted to thoughts of kindness and healing, the mist would thin, revealing new passages forward. After what seemed like hours of navigating the ever-changing labyrinth, Liora emerged into a perfectly circular clearing where a single tree grew, its bark black as night yet embedded with tiny points of light like stars, captured in darkness. Beneath this tree rested a stone altar holding an ancient bowl carved from obsidian, so pure it reflected not just images but emotions. The book she had carried throughout her journey suddenly warmed against her side, and when she opened it, its pages filled with script describing a ritual of renewal that would strengthen the failing bonds containing the ancient darkness. As twilight approached, Liora carefully gathered dew from specific flowers growing around the altar, added 3 drops of water from a spring that bubbled nearby, and waited for the precise moment when the first star would appear in the evening sky. As the first silver star blinked into existence above Obsidian Peak, Liora poured the mixture of dew and spring water into the obsidian bowl, where it began to glow with an inner light that matched the starlight contained in her crystal vial. The air around the altar grew heavy with anticipation, scented with night-blooming jasmine and the clean ozone fragrance that often precedes summer rain. Following the instructions in her book, she added 7 specific herbs collected throughout her journey, each representing a different aspect of balance, growth and rest, joy and reflection, giving and receiving. As she worked, Liora found herself humming a melody she didn't consciously know, yet somehow remembered, her voice blending harmoniously with the evening breeze rustling through the leaves of the starlit tree. Just as she completed the mixture, the ground beneath the altar began to tremble, and a column of shadow rose from a previously invisible crack in the earth. Unlike ordinary darkness, this shadow had texture and weight, moving with deliberate purpose as it formed a towering figure of indistinct shape. Fear flickered briefly in Leora's heart, but did not take hold. Instead, she recalled the giant's words about balance and the vision of her future self standing with compassionate presence before this very entity. The darkness spoke without sound, its message forming directly in her mind. "You have come to imprison me again, little healer." The words carried no malice, only a profound weariness that stirred unexpected empathy within Leora's heart. Drawing upon her enhanced perception granted by the sorceress's oil, Liora studied the shadow being more carefully and noticed something unexpected. Tiny fractures throughout its form where small amounts of light leaked outward, as if something luminous was trapped within the darkness rather than the other way around. Understanding dawned like the first gentle rays of sunrise painting the horizon. "You're in pain," she whispered, her voice soft with compassion rather than accusation. "The balance wasn't just to contain you, but to protect you as well." The shadow being pulsed with surprise, its edges momentarily softening before it replied, "None have seen this truth for 1,000 years." Instead of performing the ritual exactly as written, Liora followed the intuition growing stronger in her heart with each passing moment. She removed the vial of starlight from around her neck and held it up, its radiance illuminating the clearing with gentle silver light. "This doesn't belong to me, nor does it belong solely to the stars," she said with newfound confidence. "It is part of the whole, just as you are." With reverent care, she poured half the vial's contents into the obsidian bowl, where it swirled with the herb mixture, creating patterns reminiscent of galaxies in formation. The remaining starlight she offered directly to the shadow being, holding the vial toward its center, where the fractures seemed most numerous and painful. At first, nothing happened beyond a subtle intensification of the trembling beneath their feet. Then, with a sound like a long-held breath finally released, the shadow being enveloped the vial, drawing the remaining starlight into itself. A transformation began. The darkness did not disappear, but rather integrated with the light, creating something entirely new. Where once stood a being of pure shadow, now hovered an entity of twilight essence, neither fully bright nor fully dark, but existing in perfect balance between the two states. "You did not seek to destroy, but to heal," it observed, its voice now audible and reminiscent of the moment between day and night when the world holds its breath in perfect equilibrium. "In doing so, you have restored what was broken long ago." The twilight being raised what might have been considered arms toward the sky, and the stars responded with increased brilliance, their light forming streamers that connected with the entity in a celestial embrace. The obsidian bowl on the altar began to overflow, its luminous contents spilling outward in rivulets that spread across the ground, forming a network of glowing lines that resembled the root system of an enormous tree. These radiant channels extended beyond the clearing, down the mountain, and outward toward distant lands. Where this light touched the earth, plants responded with renewed vigor, unfurling leaves and blossoms regardless of the hour. The air filled with a chorus of awakening birds, their songs blending into a harmonious melody that spoke of renewal and hope. Corvus, who had remained silent throughout the encounter, now spoke with evident satisfaction. "You have done what generations of keepers could not. Liora of the healing hands, you have not merely contained the darkness, but transformed it through understanding." The raven's feathers caught the combined light of stars and the twilight being, revealing intricate patterns previously invisible. Balance is not achieved through separation and imprisonment, but through integration and acceptance. This is the true wisdom of healing that your mentor hoped you would discover. As if summoned by these words, Liora's book floated from where she had placed it, hovering before her with pages rapidly filling with new text. The story of what had just transpired, recorded for future generations. The twilight being addressed Liora once more before ascending toward the stars that had called to it. "For centuries I was known only as the ancient darkness, feared and shunned. You saw beyond appearances to the wounded light within, and offered healing rather than further confinement. This gift of compassion has restored balance, not just to me but to the land itself." It gestured toward the spreading network of luminous roots, still expanding outward from the altar. "These channels will carry renewed energy to all the places where balance has faltered. Your village stones will shine brightly once more, and the stars will again whisper their wisdom to those who listen." As dawn approached, painting the eastern sky with delicate brush strokes of rose and gold, Liora felt a profound sense of completion settle within her chest like a warm ember. The journey had changed her in ways she was only beginning to understand. Doubt had transformed into quiet confidence, fear into curiosity, and theoretical knowledge into embodied wisdom. She gathered her belongings, now lighter than when she began despite containing the same items, and prepared for the journey homeward. Before leaving the clearing, she approached the starlit tree and placed her palm against its bark in gratitude. To her delight, the tree responded by releasing a single leaf that transformed into a butterfly of living light, which circled her once before leading the way down the mountain path. The return journey unfolded with remarkable ease, landscapes that had taken days to cross now connecting through hidden pathways that seemed to anticipate her arrival. Everywhere Liora traveled, she witnessed signs of the renewed balance spreading through the land. Waters ran clearer, plants displayed more vibrant health, and animals moved with increased vitality. In the villages she had visited previously, people greeted her with knowing smiles and gifts of food and flowers, somehow aware of her role in the positive changes they were experiencing. The giant's cave was empty when she passed, but a new constellation had appeared in the night sky, resembling his distinctive profile. The blind sorceress simply nodded in satisfaction when Liora visited, saying only, "You have learned to see with more than eyes, as all true healers must. When at last Liora crested the final hill overlooking her home village, tears of joy welled in her eyes at the sight that greeted her. The protective stones glowed with renewed intensity, their blue light visible, even in daylight. The willow tree at the village center had doubled in size, its cascading branches creating an expanded sanctuary where children played and elders gathered. Gardens overflowed with unprecedented abundance, and the very air seemed to shimmer with vitality. Liora stood at the village entrance as if she had known precisely when her apprentice would return, her proud smile warming Liora's heart like summer sunshine. "The doubting healer returns as a master," she observed, embracing Liora with arms that felt like home. That evening, the entire village gathered for a celebration unlike any before, with tables laden with harvest bounty and lanterns floating among the willow branches like earthbound stars. As twilight deepened into night, Liora was asked to share her story, which she did with eloquence born of experience rather than practice. When she described the transformation of darkness into twilight essence, several villagers nodded in recognition as if something deep within them resonated with this truth. "Balance is not the absence of darkness," she explained, watching understanding dawn in their eyes, but the harmonious integration of all aspects of existence. Just as we need both day and night, we need both joy and sorrow to live fully. In the days that followed, Liora established her own healing practice alongside Ilara's, specializing in ailments that affected the spirit as much as the body. Her cottage garden expanded to include plants from all the regions she had traveled through, creating a living pharmacy of extraordinary diversity. The book that had guided her journey now served as a teaching tool, its pages revealing different wisdom to each person who consulted it with sincere intent. Corvus remained her companion, though he now spoke freely to anyone seeking guidance, his cryptic wisdom and occasional humor becoming beloved throughout the village. Children especially adored the raven, bringing him shiny treasures in exchange for riddles that expanded their minds and sparked their imaginations. Years passed in peaceful productivity, with Liora eventually taking on apprentices of her own, young people who, like herself once, carried doubt alongside their gifts. She taught them not only the practical aspects of healing, but also the deeper wisdom she had gained on her journey, that compassion is the most powerful medicine, that balance requires acceptance of all parts of oneself, and that transformation often begins with the simplest act of truly seeing another. On special nights when the stars aligned in certain patterns, she would lead her students to the protective stone circle, where together they would renew the connections between earth and sky through rituals of gratitude and remembrance. As seasons turned and silver threads began to appear in Liora's hair, travelers occasionally arrived seeking the healer who balanced the ancient darkness. To these visitors she offered the same gentle hospitality she extended to all, sharing meals flavored with herbs from her garden and stories beside evening fires. Some came seeking dramatic magic or grand gestures, only to discover that true healing often resided in quiet moments of connection and the gentle art of listening with full presence. Those who stayed long enough eventually understood that Liora's greatest gift was not the spectacular transformation she had facilitated on Obsidian Peak, but her daily practice of meeting each person, plant, and creature with genuine compassion and curiosity. On the anniversary of her journey each year, Liora would climb alone to the highest nearby hill to watch the sunset give way to emerging stars. There, in the gentle transition between day and night, she often sensed the presence of the twilight being, now a guardian of cosmic balance rather than a prisoner of ancient fears. These quiet communions filled her with profound gratitude for the path that had led her from doubt to certainty, from separation to connection. As twilight deepened around her on one such evening, a butterfly of living light, perhaps the same one born from the starlit tree, landed briefly on her outstretched palm before ascending to join the first stars appearing in the velvet sky. Liora smiled, her heart full of peaceful joy, knowing that in the grand pattern of existence, each being has its perfect place, including those who once doubted their own worth.